Throughout history, humans have gathered around campfires to share stories. It's one of the oldest things that we do. The Godfather showed us that power corrupts. Shawshank told us that hope is the one thing that they can't take from us. Fight Club asked, who are we really when everything else is stripped away? Some of the most perfectly crafted tales of hope, betrayal, loss and revenge ever committed to film. And yet the stories we found in our beloved video games? They shit the bed so hard. You find yourself wondering if the writers have ever read a book, watched a film, or even felt an emotion. So why in the format where we actually live the story do games take second place to cinema? What does a novel give you? Beautiful prose, a rich inner monologue, the author breathing life directly into your imagination. And film? My God, film is extraordinary. 2 hours of light and sound engineered by hundreds of people to make you feel something specific, at a specific moment in time, and a specific way to feel. But you have no say in the experience. You sit there, you receive it. So when games said, wait a minute, what if I just didn't? What if instead of watching the hero stand on the brink of an impossible choice, you were the one standing there, controller in hand, fat arse squished into the sofa, and whatever you decide for your character, that's on you. The guilt, the glory, the, oh God, what have I just done? Up until the sun comes up, it's all been down to you. And that's not a small thing. That's a fundamental shift in what storytelling can be. It goes deeper than just choices. Think about how you come to know the character in a game. You don't just watch them, you inhabit them. If you're paying attention, then you often learn what makes them tick before you even learn their name. You feel the resistance in their movements, the way the world reacts to their presence. By the time the story asks you to care about them, you already do. You've been them for hours. Then there's the subject of time. A film only gets 2 hours to build a world and tell the story within. Games can take 40, 60, 80 hours to see the whole tale. And it's not always padding, it can be potential. The space to build something so lived in that the world starts to feel real in a way no other medium can match. And when a developer truly understands all of that, the agency, the embodiment, the time, extraordinary things can happen. There's a game called Outer Wilds. It has no cutscenes, no dialogue systems, absolutely no hand-holding. It gives you a solar system, a spaceship, and 22 minutes to get everything done. The story isn't told to you, you find it, piece by piece, loop by loop, until the moment it all clicks and you understand just what's happened. And then you realise you couldn't have felt that in a cinema. Not like that.
Not like this. Not like this.
Not with that weight, because you found it. That's what video games are capable of. Now we'll come back to the Outer Wilds. We'll also get into The Last of Us, The World of Death Stranding, and Detroit Become Human. Games that swung for the perfect way to tell a story, all with wildly different results. But first, if games have this much potential, why do so many of them still fumble? Here's something that most game developers won't say out loud. Narrative in a game isn't there to make the game better. It's there to contextualise the action, to give you a reason to care about what you're doing. You don't add story to improve the mechanics, you add it to make mechanics mean something. And when a developer forgets that, they start treating the story as the main event and the gameplay as the interruption. Everything just starts to fall apart. Because here's how players actually experience a video game. You don't sit down and play it in the same way you would watch a movie. You die, you try again, you put it down for 3 days because your kid got the shits. You come back, you've forgotten where you were, you skip the cutscenes, you actually watched twice already, and suddenly the emotional beat the writers spent 6 months crafting doesn't land exactly the way they were expecting it to. Gamers fail, they play across multiple sittings, and most players never finish the game anyway, even if a developer doesn't want to hear that. And as someone who spends his days writing video essays and his thoughts about games, I'm often in the same boat. I can spend days crafting a script, editing a video, just for people to stop watching halfway through. So those hours of carefully constructed cutscenes is going to play out fragmented, interrupted, half remembered across weeks, which means your twisting, intricate narrative with its carefully seeded payoffs is never actually seen. Now, have we the creatives wasted our time? No, because you can't just stop crafting a story because a large portion of people are never going to see it. You have to finish what you've started. But the smarter approach, and this is something the GTA series actually does really well, is either dial back the plot and complexity and build it out in lots of punchy self-contained arcs, or just create simplicity overall. Keep each sitting satisfying on its own terms. Don't ask players to hold 17 threads in their head across months of gameplay sessions. Detroit Become Human tried something genuinely interesting here. Those branching QuickTime sequences during action scenes, they turned pass or fail moments into something with a bit more texture. But even then, they weren't satisfying on a press-by-press basis. And if we're honest, Detroit is stunning. and it's an ambitious piece of work, but it's much closer to an interactive story than an actual game. The player's a passenger in what is basically a self-driving car. Maybe the question isn't how do we tell better stories inside our game, maybe it's how do we make gameplay feel like the story. So, we've established that most games fumble it, that developers mistake complexity for depth, that the player is too often a passenger in their own story. But if you played enough games, you'll know, some got it right. Some got it so right that it makes you furious the rest don't try harder. Let's talk about The Last of Us. Everything we've criticised up till now, The Last of Us does the opposite. The violence doesn't feel like a reward, it's the cost. Joel doesn't move like your typical action hero. He moves like a man in his 50s, a feeling I'm starting to become familiar with. He's survived things he shouldn't have. Every encounter is desperate and ugly, and when it's over, you don't punch the air, you breathe a massive sigh of relief. The story and the gameplay aren't two separate things sitting next to each other, they're the same thing. The mechanics of the narrative. Scavenging for supplies isn't a typical gameplay loop. It's a constant reminder that this world will kill you and everyone you love if you don't pay attention. The relationship between Joel and Ellie isn't told you in cutscenes. You feel it accumulate over 40 hours of keeping her alive. It's much like having kids of your own. And that opening 20 minutes, fuck me. If you know, you know. As pure filmmaking, it'd be extraordinary, which has been shown through the HBO TV series. But as a game, when you're the one getting stuck in, when your hands are on the controller, it's devastating. It's devastating in a way cinema cannot replicate, because it happened to you. And that's where the bar is. That's what's possible. Now, if you ask most gamers, lots of us will agree that The Last of Us is pretty good as it gets. Even people who don't play games have heard of it. So let me push you into a slightly more uncomfortable territory. Death Stranding could probably be described as an example of vision outrunning execution, and for a lot of players, that's where the conversation ends. It's too slow, it's kind of weird. It's too many hours walking across an empty tundra-like landscape delivering parcels, like you're tripping balls and watching some unaired episode of Postman Pat. I get it, I genuinely do, but here's the thing, and stick with me on this, the walking's the story. Hideo Kojima built a game all about connection, about the loneliness of a fractured world and the radical absurd act of choosing to cross it in any way to reach another person. He made you experience loneliness for 40 hours, and the emptiness isn't a design feature, it's the point of the game. The silence between destinations is what makes the arrival mean something. That first moment where me and another player's invisible contribution, that was a beautiful moment. When I was exhausted and lost, there was a road I built together with strangers that I'd never meet. I felt something I'd never felt watching a film. A kind of quiet gratitude for another anonymous human being, built into the game's mechanics, no cutscene required. The fact that a game that can make you feel something purely through gameplay, it's something non-gamers will never be able to experience, which is a thought that kind of depresses me, to be fair. So if you have friends and family that aren't into video games, maybe don't let them play Death Stranding, but you can try and tell them about it. But at least tell them how great it feels to traverse a barren wasteland just for Conan O'Brien to open his shelter door as you hand over his package. Now, is Death Stranding for everyone? Absolutely not. It demands patience most games don't ask for, and people will never forgive it for that. But as a piece of storytelling that could only exist as a game, it belongs here in this conversation. Now let me tell you more about this game called Outer Wilds. I've already touched on it briefly, but let's really get into it, because this is a game that shows how games can tell stories differently. There's no cutscenes, dialogue trees, no quest markers tell you where the story is. You wake up in a solar system that's got 22 minutes left to live, then it ends. You wake up again, the same morning, the same 22 minutes. The entire story is a genuinely profound one about curiosity, grief, and what it means to let go. Also, there's bits you'll miss as you play through the Outer Wilds. One player's experience through the solar system will be unique. The ruins you explore, the logs you read, physics you experiment with, the narrative's distributed across the world, and you're the one assembling it. There's a point early on where you find out why the solar system's ending. Nobody tells you anything, you just find out for yourself as you're told to look out for the exact reason. And the ending? Well, without any spoilers, it only works because you've earned it. A film could show you the same events, and it wouldn't be moving. But in Outer Wilds, when the pieces finally click, the feeling isn't, that was a great story, it's, fuck, that meant something. And it's the kind of thing that you can only experience through games. So The Last of Us proved that games can beat cinema at its own game, and Outer Wilds proves sometimes games don't need to. We started around the campfire, humanity telling stories to make sense of the world, pass something on, to feel less alone in the dark. And then we invented cinema. For centuries it was the highest form of tradition. The Godfather, Shawshank, Fight Club. Stories so perfectly constructed they feel like they always existed. Something that put the controller in your hands and said, alright, your turn. The potential was always there, we've seen it. Joel and Ellie surviving in the impossible, building roads with complete strangers in an otherwise empty world, a solar system ending and ending and ending until you finally understand why. These aren't accidents, they were built by people, human beings who understood something fundamental. That the story and the player can't be two separate things, that the mechanics have to mean something. That's the greatest trick this medium can pull, is making you forget you're playing nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Stupid sexy Flanders.
However, so many games aren't there yet. Too many still treat the story as decoration, something painted over the top of the experience, rather than woven into the bones of it. And don't forget, thousands of games aren't about the story at all. They're there for the competition, or just a toy to be played with. But too many mistake complexity for depth, cutscenes for emotion, and player agency for the illusion of control. But the ones that get it right don't just compete with cinema. They do something cinema will never be able to do. They make it yours. So I'll leave you with a question. What's the game that made you feel something a film never could? That moment where you realised that video games were actually capable of something genuinely extraordinary. Please, type it in the comments, I'll be interested to see what you have to say. Also, if this is the kind of thing you want more of, you know what to do. See you around the campfire.